Good morning, I am Kevin Price. Delighted to be with you. Going to spend some time talking to you about you and your business. And, quite often I've talked to, on the program, any listener of this program knows I have a pretty strong libertarian streak, and it's getting stronger all the time as I see that, there's an old cliche, a conservative is a liberal that's been mugged. And I'm beginning to believe that a libertarian is a conservative that's figuring out who's doing a lot of the mugging. And we live in a country that has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the people who are in prison. And so, to me, it speaks volumes that there's something amiss here in this country of ours. And so, I've advocated, if your kid or if you have someone in law enforcement begin to ask you questions, the very first thing I've told people to do is they need to call their lawyer before they say a single word to a police officer. Unless they're a witness to something, they need to call a lawyer ASAP, because the law enforcement's not in the justice business nearly as much as it is in the conviction business, and it makes things really dicey. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this in the latter part of this conversation, but it ties in as well for our first guest here on today's program, Christopher Corso. He's an attorney that is recently opening offices here in the Houston market with a specialty in criminal law. And I thought it was kind of interesting in light of the fact that I've been talking exactly about this issue for the last few months, to introduce my audience to someone who handles that exact type of issue in case police officers do begin to ask questions that make them uncomfortable. And so we're going to kind of kill two birds with one stone. Welcome to the program, Christopher.
Good morning, Kevin.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Well, for the better part of 15 years, I've worked as a prosecutor, both a prosecutor and defense attorney, for most of that, defense attorney in Maricopa County, Arizona, the Phoenix, Scottsdale area.
Very famous area of Arizona.
It is.
If you watch Fox News, you know exactly where it is.
Yeah, it's notorious for its crime rate and so on.
Yeah. And you're originally from Rhode Island. You've been in Arizona for how long?
Roughly 15, 16 years.
Yeah, very good, very good. And recently decided to move into the Houston market. Are you in any other markets other than in Arizona?
No, Arizona and now Houston. Yes.
And now Houston.
Yeah.
Why Houston?
Well, like Arizona, Harris County and Maricopa County, very, very similar in crime and penalties and the way law enforcement goes about their business, as you were just speaking of. So, and the two factors I've looked at in my deciding on a different market is the economic and the legal structure of the area.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that economic structure and the legal environment. You already alluded to the legal environment, and there is kind of a broad cloth in terms of the way law enforcement works in Houston. It's kind of known for that, and I've got great friends who are in law enforcement, and they're great guys. But when you have limited resources, there's a rush to judgment. And when you have a population the size of Houston, they really want to focus on someone and get something done, much more so than justice. And that sounds terrible, but I've actually had friends in law enforcement say that's the reality. Their success is measured by convictions. Their success is measured on not justice nearly as much as convictions, because you can only quantify one. You can't quantify the other.
That's exactly true, the conviction rate. And that's the same in Maricopa County. It's how many guilties do you get? Promotions, advancements, things like that. But, as far as the economic structure and what's a fit for my firm, the population itself, I mean, you're talking about the fourth largest populated city in the country. When you get that many people in that area, there's going to be crime. There's people on top of each other, basically. So yeah. You're going to have that.
Yeah. And people think about this. They automatically think of, what they watch at 10 p.m. on the news. But the reality is that crime transcends every economic group, and white collars are being involved in these as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, this area it's the one thing I found, the diversity in business. This is not just an oil city based on oil anymore. You have different companies moving in here. A lot of it, you have healthcare providers. Memorial Hermann employs close to 20,000 Houstonians and so on. And because of things like that, you get that diverse population and different types of people from all walks of life. And when you have that, you have different views on the legal structure and laws and crime. And with that, you tend to have issues, and you need people like me, I guess, to sort those out.
Yeah,
people.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Well, what made you go into the criminal side of law?
You know, I when I was back east, I interned and worked for some lawyers that were involved in criminal, and it just always seemed like other lawyers, I'm sure, that came out wanting to make a difference, help some people, and I thought the best experience was to get into the law enforcement side of things and the prosecution side to gain some experience and knowledge of how that side works.
Yeah, yep. Talk a little bit, about. I think it's kind of crazy when I hear myself say the idea that it's important to have a few defense attorneys. Not necessarily, you certainly don't want on retainer unless you're a gangster, But to know a few defense attorneys to have actually had conversations even with some in advance, just because of how crazy our culture has become. Again, 5% of the population. 25% of the world imprisoned population in this country. There's something amiss.
Yeah, there is, and that's why the different types of philosophies. I mean, for me, the old school days of, hey, we're going to be your defense attorney. You give us a fee, and we're going to talk to you, try to minimize the damage, and then never speak to you again. I mean, that's old school mentality. That doesn't get it done anymore. And my philosophy in my firms is, you represent the person, not just the client, and that includes the family. For every person you take off the street and incarcerate, the stats show 2 other people in that family are going to commit offenses, and one of them violent crimes. And so, if you treat the person and the family, there is education, and you can make a difference that way in educating these people versus just putting them away.
Yeah. And how long have you been practicing law now?
About 18 years.
And on the defense side?
Defense side, about 10.
About 10.
Yeah.
So how often have you had individuals call because they're seeing some early troubles, with law enforcement, and you saw that it made a difference in the way things ended up, being sorted out? Catching that red flag, wait a minute, this isn't asking me, what I think of the weather. They're asking me stuff that actually could be held against me here. Yeah,
we get a lot of calls that way, a lot of referral based. So, and unfortunately, some repeat. When you're dealing with things such as DWI or violent crimes, you have family members that call from previous clients and so on, and they want to know, hey, what happens? I'm in this situation, and either my son or my daughter, they're going to be getting out soon, and it doesn't seem like if they're going to be put on probation or parole, what's next? What's going to happen to them? What can we do to try to prevent anything going forward? And that's being proactive, and we like to handle our practice that way.
Yeah. And so, in other words, more relationship oriented.
It should be. This day and age. It should be more of that than the old school sit down, shut up, and let us be your lawyer.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Talk a little bit about, first of all, how often are you personally in Houston? And I guess you have attorneys that are exclusively working here in Houston.
Yeah, we have licensed attorneys here to handle cases on different variety of cases, from traffic all the way up to major crimes. I'm here about half the month. I spend half the time here and half the time in Arizona, but with technology, you're able to be everywhere.
Right. So you spend probably, sounds like a couple of weeks a month here.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, well, that's good, and especially early on.
Yeah, early on is important. You want to get to know the community, and I've done a lot of research here, and I've been keeping my eye on Houston for several years.
Yep. Corso Law Firm, I want to encourage you to check it out. That's Corso, CORSO, Law, LAW, Group, GROUP.com. And really do appreciate your time, and do wish you well. And again, I always encourage the listener, don't wait until you have legal issues before you talk to a legal specialist, because again, we live in really weird times. And my favorite part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights, which are kind of being flippantly thrown around in the most abusive way, like I hadn't seen in decades. And it's time for you to become familiar with those Bill of Rights and make sure you have relationships with an attorney that can help you with that. Thanks so much, Christopher.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me.
All right, when we come back, much more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com, and you're listening to The Price of Business.
I fought the law and the